where you have an officer basically around the neck area.
These two retired Vegas cops, now podcast hosts.
They don't have ID, they can't get into a hotel room.
To get them the help they need, especially if someone even gets arrested. A lot of people don't know how the justice system works.
What you guys have going on is necessary, it's needed.
Hey there, it's David Kohlmeyer. Thanks so much for joining us today at The Problem Solver every Thursday at 4:30. Thanks so much for joining us today. Every single week, bringing on amazing people talking about great topics, community leaders, people that have experience that want to share their wisdom. Today, I'm very, very fortunate to bring on a retired police officer that I worked with over 20 years ago. And I figured that it'd be great to bring him on. We haven't seen each other in 20 years. Wanted to catch up with him since he's visiting Las Vegas, find out what's going on in New York City. With all of his experience, even after I left New York City as a police officer, I want to see what he can share in regards to his experience of being over 25 years as a New York City police officer and as a sergeant retiring. Today, I have William Liang from New York City. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks for having me on.
So this is awesome because it's been over 20 years. I know we messaged each other on Facebook and social media, and I figured one day you'd come out and so on. We were talking, and it's great about social media is that we didn't have Facebook 20 years ago. So it's great that you could see retired guys that worked with and posting photos and catch up. So I think it's great. So let's jump back because it's been a long time. So I wanted to recap. So you started out in what year was it?
95 in the academy.
So 1995 NYPD is when you started. And how old were you then?
30.
30 years of it. Okay. So I guess I started in 1998, and I was actually 22 at the time. So it's interesting why people start at different times. But tell us, give us a little backdrop. Tell us from, why you wanted to become a police officer in the beginning. Give us a little bit of your intro.
I thought it would be cool. I always liked helping people and interacting with people. I figured, being a cop, you learn. And you can help people, and by helping people, you help yourself. It's like a learning thing. You're always learning. And it's good to see when you help somebody, you've accomplished something. You've done something, as small as it may be. Can't save everybody, but if you can help that one person, I thought that would be a great thing.
What did you do? I never do. What did you do prior? Because you were 30 when you started. What did you do from 20 to 30?
I did some data, like a data analyst.
Okay.
Computer thing. I don't even think there was a title for it. It was they just hired me and I did my computer thing.
I was saying a lot of people, I was 22 when I was started. A lot of people start when they're younger. Technically for policing, right? You started a little bit older.
Right.
Okay.
It was something that I wanted to do a lot of things. I wanted to be a fighter pilot. I wanted to go in the military. I wanted to be an architect. I wanted to be a cop. I guess because I saw Miami Vice. You see all the cop shows, and like, oh, that's cool. They get to drive cool cars. I said, oh, I'll give it a shot. So I signed up for it, and boom, I was in.
I always laughed when I was a kid. I was watching Chips more, right?
There you go.
Chips and stuff like that. And my cousin Steven had blonde hair, like blue eyes, so he was the other guy, and I was
Punch,
yeah. So it's been a while, but I think when we watch these shows as kids, especially boys, growing into men, you're like, wow, that's really cool being a cop, right? I used to play like cops and robbers on the street in Queens, and we would have one street, like you have to find the bad guy, and they could be hiding behind the car. I mean, technically that's police work, right? So I guess at a younger level, so it's kind of interesting. So when we worked together, it was so I started July 1st, 1998. So by the time I got there, we worked in the 7-3 in Brooklyn and Brownsville. So it probably was 1999, I came probably February, March 1999. So you were already there, 96, 97, 98, 99, 4 years on.
Right.
And tell me what your thoughts are in regards to the 7-3. I mean, your honest opinion in general. I'll share what I say about, working there and starting there. But what are your thoughts? Like, you got sent there? I mean, you didn't, the joke is to have a hook or a crane to go somewhere. So I'm assuming you didn't have a hook to go to the 7-3.
I did have a hook, but I just let the dice roll.
Okay.
Like they say in Vegas. I just rolled the dice, and wherever they sent me, I said, I didn't want to push it. I didn't want to force something.
Okay.
Because I put in for something, and what if I don't like it? So
That's a good point.
I said, all right, wherever they send me, so be it. And
So-
that's where I went.
So what we're talking about in general is that anything this happens any way that you are. Like if I worked here at Sticky Paw Studio and I knew somebody, sometimes they're able to help in general. And there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing in regards to corruption with it. Basically, it's like, hey, I like this guy, I know him. Let's put him in, the 111 precinct. Let's put him here, different places. What the terminology we use in NYPD is like a hook or a crane, basically like a fish. Like you're being hooked out of an area to go somewhere else, maybe go to a specialized unit. Some people, I was thinking about it just now. It's like it's not. People ask me all the time, like, "Oh, have you ever seen corruption or different things?" That is not, in my eyes, a form of corruption. It's just basically if you know people that you're able to get to a certain command or a special unit. Just like anyway, if you work for IBM or Microsoft or Apple, right? Like you knew somebody like, "Hey, why don't you come over to my division or where I work at, or maybe another state?" If you work for corporate America, so you could have gone somewhere else.
Yes.
Okay, that's cool. That's interesting. So it's funny. I didn't know anybody, and when you get your, I think it was gun and badge day, they tell you where you're going to go. And my story is, and we'll hear about your story, is they say 7-3, and I'm like, where the hell is? I'm 22 years old. I grew up in Queens, and I remember going in the cafeteria, the big map, and I went to the map, and I saw 7-3. I'm like, I don't know what the hell this shit is. I'm like 7-3, like Brooklyn. And then all of a sudden, people started saying like, "You better go buy a second gun." Yeah. One gun's not enough. Like, what do you mean I need a second gun? I'm 22 years old, and I'm like, I need a second gun. Like, for what reason? And I remember being somewhat upset because I kept thinking, when you go out for 1 month in New York City as a cop, right? You, at least when I went, tell me your story. For 1 month, you went out for field training, and I went to PSA 9, which was like Queens and Astoria, and I was like the only guy that went to Queens. So I was like, wow, because I thought I knew somebody. I was like, oh, I'll probably go back to Queens. I'll probably go back to PSA 9. I'll probably go to Queens because I got Queens for field training, so that it must be rare. I must have, because I thought I knew somebody. So luck of the draw, I didn't know anybody. Long story short, I get to the 7-3, which is Brownsville, Brooklyn. How did it work for you for same thing, gun and badge day?
It was, I believe there was a few of us that went. And when they said, everyone got, whoever got 7-3, some people were like, "What did you do?" Like, "Oh, you don't have anybody. You're screwed. You're done." And then same thing is like, "Oh, you go in there, you better get a second gun. Try to make friends, get a hook." It was just all the comments, which was negative comments like.
But you didn't know. I mean, with 30 at the time, did you know like the 7-3? Like, did you know the numbers? Like meant Brownsville? Did you know it was bad? You just knew it wasn't good.
I just knew it was not good from hearing from other people. You're hearing from the instructors, like they're telling you, like, just keep your eyes open, make sure you look up. You're writing a summons, look up, constantly look up. Look around you. Don't turn your back. Keep your back to the wall if you're standing on a foot post. Mm-hmm. Nothing good happens in Neville was what they said.
Got it. It's interesting for people that don't understand like what we went through. Is that all these things basically is about survival. You're basically like, how do you go home at night? I mean, looking up is what, because they can. There was cops have been killed with buckets of cement. I think it was in Washington Heights years ago. Right. So a lot of cops have gotten killed. So when he talks about these things, even though we laugh at it today, is that he basically it's other cops saying that if you want to survive your day or you want to survive 7-3 precinct in Brownsville. Like I said, I always say 99% of the people were good people. 1% shooting, killing each other, or trying to kill a cop in general. That's the 1% that we always had to worry about. Right. And I always very specific. Like when we say Brownsville, things have changed over 20 years. But there were good people, but the good people would go home and lock themselves up and not go out and go to work and go back and forth. But the 1% that were gang members that were shooting each other, which is what the cops have to deal with, is a problem, right? It's dangerous.
Right.
So when he says back on the wall or look up or writing a summons to be careful, it's all about safety. And I do agree with you. That's the one thing that you learn in the 7-3 is basically how to be safe or how to talk to people. So that day for me, when I went in, it was 7-3 and 7-5 in one room. And I always remember, same thing you remember?
Yeah.
Like the two precincts together. And there's a bunch of cops together. And I always remember, not that it makes a difference if the cop was white or black or whatever. I forgot his name. It's a long time. But this tall white cop comes in. And he's got like blonde hair, blue eyes. And I just remember because sometimes, right, the guys coming in you think maybe would be the forte of the precinct or who it is, right? Like maybe if it was an Asian cop or a black cop, maybe it's more black, maybe it's more Asian, who knows what, right? Like if you're going to be a cop in Chinatown, you would expect like a Chinese officer, Asian officer coming in to talk with you. But anyways, there was this white, really white cop, blonde hair, tall guy, and he kept saying like, when do you guys get a second gun? Like when can you pick it up? Or do you have vests ready? Like he kept talking about vests and guns. I'm like, I'm going to war, like this is basically I'm going to war, And I just remember laughing. I was like, I don't know what I got myself into. And as a New York City cop, I think my starting salary was like $29,000. And it was very, very low after state tax, city tax, pension payment, right? I mean, you're lucky that you had a few nickels, in your pocket by the time. So
to make a phone call.
yeah. So
We
anyway,
didn't have cell phones.
so it is very interesting. So these are things that we never probably ever spoke about, but you could have went somewhere. So when you finally get to the 7-3, you were like, hey, I'm going to learn. Like, what were your thought process?
Well, I figured if these guys that we all came together, I'm like, oh, might as well just ride it out.
Okay.
If I'm going to learn, I always thought, I guess being 30 and older,
Okay.
compared to like when you got on, I saw a little bit more of the world. So I said, you know what? I'm here. It's pretty bad, and there's a lot of action. I figured, let me learn the job. This is the best way to learn the job faster, is by going to some place that's busy. Whereas compared to, say, going to Bayside, which is the 111, which is a slow house, right? There's A house, B house, C house. We worked in A house. You go to C house, you don't see as much. The radio's not clicking all the time. It's where A house, you're doing everything. You go from an accident to a domestic to a dispute to felony assault. You're all over the place, especially 7-3. The radio's
Constantly going.
Yeah, doing 15, 20 jobs. Like I did day tours. So day tours is busy. 15, 20 jobs a day, If we try to get breakfast in, if I don't get breakfast that day, it's going to be a bad day. I know I'm going to have a bad day.
Yeah. It's interesting. So just to recap for people that are listening. So when he talks about house, it's kind of like a firehouse.
Right.
A house, B house, C house. A is like really, really busy. C house is where I grew up in Queens, 111, where basically just quieter. There's not as much crime. There's not many shootings in general. So in A house where we worked in the 7-3, it was a busy place. Still, I'm sure busy to this day, even though things have changed or gentrification taking place. And then in regards to the amount of calls for the day, right? Like any cop in general like that, you could have 3 calls, 5 calls, 10 calls, depends, and then you could be very busy, 20 calls. You may not be able to get a lunch if other cops don't help you out with, taking some other calls for service, right? So there's a lot of stuff, a lot of cultural stuff that goes into play. And it's been amazing since NYPD's been around for so long. Right. And we worked in in a pretty much a very, very busy place. So when you first get there in general, I guess in your mindset, were you thinking, hey, if it's not going to work out, I can make a phone call and probably get out of there?
I wasn't even thinking about it. I made some good friends. I mean, it's a busy place. Because it's busy, you bond.
Absolutely.
You bonded much faster with the people that you work with, because they're the ones that are going to come to you when you need help. So without that bond, you're like pretty much on your own. And in this line of work, we need everything we can get.
It's interesting to share. So I was NYPD for 3 years. I then get called for MTA Police, and I wound up, I resigned NYPD one day. The next day, MTA Police for 9 months during 9/11. And then after 9/11, I finally get the phone call from Henderson PD, which got my little cup here. And I was out here in Henderson for 13 years. I did 7 years for community policing. So I basically did 17 years total of policing. I was able to retire a few years ago in general. I will share with you, like for Henderson to me was a suburb police department here for Vegas. And it was very interesting because you were by yourself, where that sometimes, right, in NYPD, you always had a partner.
Yes.
Now there's always pros and cons to having a partner. Like I know that you had success, so you had a good partner when I worked there in general. But sometimes, right, if your partner was sick for the day and you're with somebody else, actually that can cause like a jeopardy in regards to your safety, right? How people, how other officers are. Not that it's a bad situation, but your tactics are together, right? You know how you're going to talk to people. And I'll share a funny story with you. So it's very, very different. So I was by myself. So I actually, in some regards, I kind of liked being by myself, right? In regards to the way I would speak to people, or I spend a few extra minutes, just like the show's The Problem Solver.
Right.
The reason why the show's The Problem Solver is that when I was out here in Henderson, I would spend a few extra minutes talking to people, right? In New York City, it's like a standard, right? You talk to people for a living as a New York City cop. You're trying to solve what? Their problem, right? It's not always about arresting people. So the joke was, when I was on patrol here, they would say, what is Kohlmeyer doing? And they would say, oh, he's trying to solve everyone's problems. But in New York City, right, that was like the thing you did. It wasn't always about arresting people. So I'm not saying the philosophy is different in Henderson or Las Vegas in general. It was just everyone as a cop was a little bit different. Like if I was already going to be there, right, spend a few extra minutes to help the person out. Right. Hopefully you prevent, my joke is you prevent a homicide or future calls for service at that location, so you can go get your coffee and donut at Dunkin' Donuts. I mean, that's the strategy behind it, right? Like if I didn't have calls for service, then I'm gonna have an easier day. Like I can go get my lunch, or I can, So we joke about getting breakfast and lunch, but it becomes a real big thing when you're in a busy house, right?
Yes. You're lucky if you can get, if you're in a busy house, you're lucky if you can get lunch or meal, as they say.
Yeah.
Right. But I always, the way I looked at it was, my approach was, if I took the extra few minutes to help somebody, I may not have to go back. In a bad area, most likely the call that you go to, it may be your first time, but you have that feeling you're gonna end up going back there again and again and again. And some people that you interact with, you're like, oh, I've been here before, and it's the same problem because it doesn't go away. Especially like however it was handled before, it never got resolved. Now we're going back. So I'm thinking if I took the extra time to explain how I can solve the problem or how the problem can be solved, the odds are I may not have to come back.
Absolutely.
I won't have to come back. They won't have to call 911 again, because the only reason people call 911 is not because they're inviting us to a party. It's because they have an issue.
Got it.
They have a problem, and we're there to solve it.
Do you feel like, I was 22 when I started, so I feel like it's a New York thing. I don't know if it's an NYPD thing. I mean, do you think most New York City cops think that way, or it's mixed? What are your thoughts?
Well,
Because we're seeing the same philosophy.
right. So when we got on, I believe it was up to like over 40,000 officers at the time. So that's a lot of different personalities. That it's like New York. There's 8 million stories. There's X amount of stories for the NYPD, personnel-wise. So there's different personalities, even though the requirements to get on is pretty much the standard. How people interact, like their background, their upbringing, how they interact with people, it's different. Some people may not going to think the way I think. Like they're not going to take the time. Like, all right, you called me here. What's the problem? How can I fix it? All right, this is how you do it, and they just want to leave. It's for several reasons. Could be they just want to go to lunch. Could be they're on numerous calls. So
Burned out.
Right. And in their mind, they think, oh, well, this call is not as serious. Let me just handle this call, move on, and go to the next serious call. You may try to rush it out. So every call is different. And how people handle it, it's just so many different angles from it.
Well, I guess it's good to see, because we never spoke about it. I mean, I think with the same thing that, my partner that I worked with as well in New York, one of the jokes was like someone was waving once, and it was, we're trying to get back to the precinct because the end of the shift, and the guy's waving. I'm like, hey, pull over. The guy needs help. He's like, nah, he's just waving to the police. I said, nobody waves to the police in this area. Like, what are you talking about? Like, so, and then he's like, I was like, just pull. I felt bad because maybe I was wrong. Maybe he was waving, but I mean, in my mind, he wanted the police, right? So if I didn't pull over, I feel like I'm dressing up as Superman. And even though the conditions I think were hard because of the pay and the situation or being in a bad area, that I felt like if I'm dressing up like Superman, I might as well be Superman, right? And if I'm not going to be Superman, like I shouldn't wear the badge and the gun and just, get a different job. So, but the problem is I feel that people get burnt out. And even the partners that I had in New York, certain people get burnt out a little bit quicker. And I'm sure, I mean, look, I wasn't saying I was perfect, 110% of the time, but you get burnt out very easily. That's why I feel like there should be some type of like rotation where cops go to different commands and different precincts, because the cop that's in the 7-3 for 20 years, I mean, he's a different person. He's a different animal than the guy walking around the 111, in a suit and tie type of thing, like it's just we're different, about to say animals, because of the people that you're associating with.
Right.
And I guess just because of the amount of, I'm not saying it's people in general, it's just the crime, right? I mean, it is what it is.
It's also the mindset, right? When we all first get on, we want to save the world. We want to help everybody. But then over time, you're like, I can't help that person. Or I tried to help that person, but didn't go the way they want. So you kind of start like, you go from being a superhero to just surviving. Like, I'm just coming in, do what I got to do, and leave. So everyone has the mindset for everybody is different. How they accept what's going on. Like some people, they take it to heart. Some people don't take it to heart. And that might be part of the problem.
I'll share a funny story. I guess while we go through this, we can have a little bit of war stories in general. But one thing that's funny you'll laugh at is that, so Tony DeVilla, right? From back in the day, right? Yeah. So I remember when we first, when we got assigned to the 7-3, we were still in the academy, we said, let's go drive the area. Let's go take a look. And I remember, you're going to laugh at this. that we put on. We were off duty, right? Like, it was a regular day off.
Yeah.
We decided to go down to the 7-3 and we went to Pickett Avenue. We actually wore our vest while we were in our personal cars. We put our vest on because we were being told it was so bad that we might as well go down there wearing our vest just to check it out. So we
Off duty.
basically, we go down there. We're still in the academy. We're driving around. We have our vest on in our regular personal car, and we're just driving on Pickett Avenue. I didn't even know where I was going, but I remember like Thomas Boylan or I already forgot the streets by the old movie theater that was there.
Yes.
You
Saratoga.
Yeah, I think it used to be like United Artists back in the day or something. I remember driving that area, and I think we may have even had a scanner or something. And I remember there was like a petty larceny or something like that took place at one of the stores. I remember we were parked and the cops rolled up and something happened. But we literally went down there wearing a vest. I mean, that's how dangerous that we were told that the area was, which is just kind of a funny story because, who really is doing that? Like,
Buffs.
Yeah.
You are buffing out.
We were, we were excited to go down there, but we were also nervous. To me, like I said, I was 22 years old. So as much as you think that you know everything, I mean, I was still young. I wasn't like a fighter. I wasn't like a big, like karate guy in general. That some people may have that, that experience. But I was nervous. But we wanted to see where we were going, and we definitely were nervous. I don't know about Tony specifically because his father was a cop in general, and he was a little bit different. He was old. He had more military experience than me. I mean, I just went through the NYPD academy, so. But anyway, Brownsville is basically definitely a dangerous area in general. Now, it's been a long time. You left in 2000, what year? Six? Okay.
2006.
So from 2002, so you were there from 95 to 2006. So you did 11 years.
Pretty much. Yeah.
About with the academy, about 10 years. So today, even though it's been since 2006, how do you feel? I mean, have you been back at all? Have you?
Back to
Back to
Brownsville?
the 7-3, yeah.
I've gone back to visit in terms of like for Gary when they had a plaque thing for Gary for
Halsburg.
for 9/11. I went back. That was the last time I went back. The neighborhood changed slightly, like where there was empty lots because when you got there, there was a lot of empty lots around. When I was driving through, the lots were built up. They built apartments. So
More real estate.
right. So it seemed to be up and coming. But in terms of crime-wise, it was only what I saw on the news. Like I would still follow what's going on in the Ville. I would see on the news, like, oh, that was my old sector. Oh, I remember that place. Oh, I remember that place. So I guess crime-wise, I don't think it's changed that much per se. Crime is always a cycle, depending on all different conditions. So crime goes up, crime goes down. It's never going to stay flat. Crime is never going to be zero. I explained that to an inspector one time because, as you know, CompStat, they're trying to drive crime down. But crime will never be zero because if crime was zero, they wouldn't need us. We'd be out of a job. So that's never going to happen.
How would you describe the 7-3 precinct basically back when you were there from 95 to 2006? How would you describe, I guess, the community or the people or the crime? Like, what would you?
Crime-wise, it's bad. It's just violence. There's a lot of good people that live there. Those are the ones we're trying to help. I mean, even the bad guys, they're bad, but we're trying to help everybody. We're not picking anybody out. But if you've done a foot post on Rock and Livonia, right, which everybody knows, when I've done foot posts, I'd watch the buses during the day tour. I'd see people getting on the train. They get off the bus because it's Rock and Livonia is a hub. So you would see people they get off the bus, run to the train, get on the train to go to work. Rush hour, same thing. They just want to get to wherever they're going before it gets dark, because nothing good happens when it gets dark. And that's how Brownsville, to me, that's how I saw Brownsville. Once it gets dark, nothing good really happens. And again, there's a lot of good people that live out there. I talk to people in the community. It seems like they treat the police department like we're supposed to solve everything. And unfortunately, it's not us. It's also the elected officials. I remember talking to a community member one time, and he says, how come the police department doesn't build a park? Why don't they build a playground over here? The police department doesn't do that. You have to reach your elected official. And he said, well, they don't want to help us. I said, but you voted for them. They have to listen to you. There's right next to near Rock and Livonia, I believe, Amboy, they had those 2-story apartment buildings. And I explained, you have 2 empty lots here. You need to reach out to your elected official. You got to talk to them. Tell them, we need something here. We need something for the community, for the kids to do. Otherwise, if there's no... The problem was also, there was 2 developments, Noble Alley, and then the one by Rock and Livonia. They would be at war with each other, the kids. So they needed
Territorial.
something. Right. So they needed something for the kids to do. And I said, you have 2 empty parking lots. No cars parked there. It's empty. You need to reach out to your elected official to build a playground here. That's what they need to do. Our job isn't to do it. I mean, elected officials don't want to hear what the cops have to say. I mean, I can say it.
Got it.
But unless it benefits them, they're not going to do it. And that's the problem.
So here's a question: how do you feel? Like, I know it's been a while. Gentrification, real estate's been going up, and they have that new stadium that's further down, right? The concert hall. What do you call it?
You're talking about the one on Flatbush?
Yeah. What is it? The
Where the Brooklyn Nets play?
yeah, that's further down.
Barclays. That's way further down.
Way further down, right? How do you feel like an area like that, because of all the housing projects and stuff like that? I mean, I would assume that you'd say housing projects are not good. Basically, because you're just stacking people up in general. I think that they put people there in general, which is definitely a problem for the fact of the housing. Just too many people combined that are low
It's
income
concentrated.
people. Yeah.
That's the problem. Is you can't concentrate too many people in a certain area because there's no room to move around. You can't stretch your legs. You can't. People on top of each other, and also the support in terms of markets, stores, and transportation too. If there's no transportation to get around, it's also hard for people. So they need some kind of support to get for themselves, or be provided for them, I should say.
So, if you had to go back in time, like what else could you do? I mean, like when people talk about parks, would parks help the situation, or just getting people out of the area?
It's not getting the people out of the area; it's getting the support they need.
Like social services and stuff like that?
The social services, for the kids, like the amount of kids out of there needs to be more facilities for them, especially in a compacted area.
Okay. All right. So I wanted to go back a little bit. I wanted to actually ask you, because it's been a while, but I never really asked the question. It's been a long time. One of the things at work, when I used to work 6 at night till 2 in the morning, at 2 in the morning, basically, was very, very dangerous. So a lot of times we would take, not saying it's safe what we did, but we went through red lights to basically get out of the area because we felt afraid that we wouldn't get robbed or killed on the way home from work. And I think it was kind of a common thing that we did that when we left from work in general. Do you remember the officer that passed away? It was the female officer, Rosario. She was a female Latino officer, right?
Yes.
Do you remember the story behind that? Because I always remember, because it's been a while, that she was leaving a shift like that. And basically, she went through a red light. I thought she got in an accident. She got killed. Do you remember the story behind that?
I believe she was, I don't know if she went through a red light, but I believe her vehicle was struck by a drunk driver when she was going home.
Mm-hmm. I always was thinking in my mind, did she take a light? I was always thinking, do you remember? I mean, it's been so long. Do you remember anything with that? Or did you feel that way? Because in the back of my mind, I always feel, because I remember she was a beautiful female officer, and I was like, what is she doing walking around Rockaway and Livonia? And then when she died, it was a tragic accident. I just kept thinking that maybe she tried to take the light.
See, I can't comment on that one. I wasn't sure of the story of whether she took the light or not. But I know she was going home, and she got T-boned by a drunk driver.
Okay, so you don't really know the story. I just kept thinking in the back of my mind, I always think about the story that I was lucky that I just made it home at nighttime,
Yeah.
All right, the other story that I had that's been a while in general, do you remember the story? I'll tell you the story if you remember it or not. I feel like you do, but I never knew what happened with it as well. So I got into an accident with my partner one time. It'll be funny because you don't know the story. It's kind of funny, I think. So I got into an accident once, and my partner was driving. I was the passenger. So when I got into the accident, it was on, I don't know what road it was. Hold on 1 second. All right, so I get into the car accident and I'm brand new. So a senior officer comes up to me and basically says, like, I was walking outside of the car. And does this sound familiar?
No.
So he says, stay in the car. He says, stay in the car. And what he tried to tell me is, you just had an accident, stay in the car, because basically, you're like, you may be injured. Like, this is the protocol. Like, I'm brand new as an officer. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. He's like, and why am I staying in the car? Like, I'm okay. He's like, well, just stay in the car because basically the ambulance is going to come and get you checked out. He was just trying to make sure that I follow procedure because if I'm injured later and so on. So after that happened, I remember I went like line of duty or something like that.
Right.
And I'm actually, it's kind of a funny story because I still have it today. So I was out maybe for like 3 weeks. So my partner kept saying to me, like, he would call me up. It's like, how you doing? I was like, oh, my back, you hurt me. You did drive. Like, I was messing with him, basically he got me back. I may need a new spine. Yeah. I got to go for surgery. Actually, it's actually funny because I always remember the story that I had my gun belt still on, right? It was like one of the hospitals. And when they took an x-ray, there was like something sticking up, in the x-ray. And I was like, oh my God, what is that? Meanwhile, it was my police radio antenna that I was still wearing when they did the x-ray. I'm like, oh my God, there's something inside me. So it was my radio. But anyway, long story short, what happened was I was gone for like 3 weeks. And then I was told that basically like some people weren't happy with me because I didn't listen about staying in the car. So what I was told was one day I was coming back, whatever. They said, did you come back into the precinct to see your locker? And I said, no, what happened? They said they casted your lock.
You a bad boy.
So they casted the lock. I'm like, what do you mean they casted my lock? Like, when you cast an arm, they would cast it. I'm like, why would they? I don't understand. I'm like 20 and a half or 23 years old. I'm like, why would they cast the lock? They literally like cast it with water. I mean, someone had to spend some time. They're like, yeah. So I never got the full story. I don't know if you remember the story, but what happened was, to me, it was like I didn't listen to the senior officer. So basically that I was being taught a lesson that I should have listened. So what happened was, as you know, that if people want to make a complaint, like any person like in human resources, they wanted to see if I was going to make a complaint against maybe another officer or something like that, because technically we could say it's vandalism, that it's a crime scene. And so what I did was, I remember I was going to start work on Monday. So what I decided to do was to get one of those big, what do you call those?
Bolt cutters.
Bolt cutters. Yeah. But I'm like, how do I go get bolt cutters, from the lieutenant that's working? Like, how do I ask for bolt cutters? Doesn't make sense. So I went out to like Home Depot Lowe's. I got bolt cutters. I put it in a black duffel bag. I felt like I was robbing the police station. I bring it in one day, like I'm coming back the next day, and I go to my locker. Nobody's around. I clip the lock, right? I see the thing, I clip it. And then I was worried that maybe that by the next day I come back, that there's going to be, casted again, right? So I'm like, I got to hide the bolt cutters, right? I can't put it inside because so I had to hide it underneath the actual locker, just in case it happened again before I came back. So I clip it, I change my lock. So the next day I come back and everyone's like looking at me because they probably wanted to see my reaction. Right. But I may believe that like nothing took place, that I didn't see anything. Like, what are you talking about? So someone said, hey, what happened to your lock? What happened? I was like, making me believe that nothing happened. So I always thought it was a funny story because I literally went into the police station with a bolt cutter and nobody knew, and I hid it underneath. Do you remember that story at all? No.
No, but you're not the first one.
That's what happened before.
You're not the last one. I don't know if they do it now. I don't even know if the new generation knows about casting a lock.
So I never fully understood. I think there's one guy that we worked with back in the day. I think eventually he told me he did. I forgot his name. Big guy. I think I always thought it was him because he was the guy that basically told me to stay in the car, Right. And it was just a learning lesson in general. But I thought it's just a funny story. I still have the lock in the cast. I have it somewhere in the house. I saved it because I thought it was just the funniest situation. And it's kind of like historical in some regards because it was really about a learning lesson, kind of a cultural thing. How do you think that comes in? How do you think that came into play? You were on longer than I were. How did that come into play? You probably remember the story of we're not going to go into detail here, but the one that was with syrup inside the locker where then they made the crime scene. You heard about that? Remember that one?
Yes. We
won't go into that one, but that was crazy because eventually a lot of stuff that's kind of messed up. I understand the situation, but that really probably, got on the gun belt and on their stuff, syrup. I know that, I don't know if I was working at the time, but I think I was. They made it like a crime scene. There was like a station house security downstairs, right? Like it got more involved. That is really drastic, and I can understand. Like I said, there's certain things wherever you work, right? Like it's kind of hazing, like a fraternity, and there's lessons to be learned from it. Whether you learn from it or not, I don't know if those people ever learned from it years later. Do you? Where would you say that came from?
That's got to be an old time thing. It's a message. It's there's a rat squad, right? Mm-hmm. We're men. Mm-hmm. growing when the job first started, men are men. If you did something wrong, you had to send a message, but you also didn't want to involve others. But as a man, you took it. You're like, okay, I did something, right? You knew you did something. That's even if you didn't know, you could have asked somebody like, "What did I do?" I get it because that's happened to me. Not a cast, something else, but maybe you didn't listen when you got out of the car. And they're like, "Oh, this guy's not following. He's not playing along." And you didn't do anything bad. You just didn't know. So by casting your locker, not casting your locker because I've seen that. It cast your lock.
The lock.
So
that was a low level.
And yes, so it was minor what you did.
Okay.
So it's like, okay, you took it as a message. Okay, I did something. I don't know what I did, but I know I did something wrong. I think maybe because I got out of the car, or maybe like they thought I was going to rat somebody out, or or I'm going to sue the guy that was driving me. And so you cut the lock, you put it away, and that was it. If it was more serious, they probably would have recasted it, but they left they left it at one, and you got the message. Yeah, you got it like, okay, and you moved on.
I'd like to know who ever came up with that. I think it's the funniest. I get it, but here's a question to people that may be listening, right? In general, why would you not just tell the other guy, like, listen, what you did was wrong? They were trying to help you out to make sure. I mean, what do you think that comes back to the cultural thing of NYPD? I mean, I'm sure the LAPD. I mean, I have no clue what happens in LAPD. Like, I wonder if that's the thing. I don't know if it's a police thing.
I'm just thinking it's more like, all right, well, again, there's so many thousands of cops. It's the largest police department in the world. It's like a small army. And of course, with a small army, you have so many different personalities. And as you've interacted with hundreds, if not thousands of officers, there's different personalities and even clients. You can talk to them. Some of them, they get it. And then some people, they'll look at you like they don't know what you're talking about. Or some, they'll just disregard you. So this is a much simpler way, where I can explain to you, like, Dave, you should have stayed in the car, and you're the kind of guy that's like, okay, no problem. I get it. I got it. I know for next time. But then you're going to get the one guy that's like, well, I'm a cop like you. Why are you telling me this? They'll have a nasty attitude, or they'll take it as a disrespect, or why are you telling me what to do? So a much simpler way was just to cast the lock, and hopefully they'll get it.
Get the lesson?
It's more of a thinking game.
Like a funny thinking game to teach a lesson.
Right.
What are other things that I didn't know about? I know about the syrup in general. What are the ones that I missed? Because you were there before me. That's the only thing I really have seen. I mean, the joke you always heard was like to take the guy's locker and put it in the parking lot so he would
Or the shower.
Or the shower?
Parking lot or the shower. Okay. I've seen the shower. I've never seen the parking lot. I've seen the shower.
I used to say that, but I never saw that.
I've seen the shower.
You've seen the shower?
Yeah. But it's also on the level of how much you screwed up. Like if it's a minor thing, it's, they'll just cast it. If it gets worse, they'll put it in the shower.
Do you think other precincts, you think it was more of a 7-3 thing? Or you think it was a cop thing, or just?
No, it's job wise. Because if you talk to guys from other places, it's creativity. Think about it. You talk about the cops. You know about the memo books, right? The drawing in the memo books. Right? You remember, like if you left your memo book on the table and you didn't mind it, somebody drew pictures in it, and
I didn't remember that.
And there's a lot of good artists out there.
They're drawing things. It's just funny because, like I said, I mean, unbelievable experiences. I'll share another thing with you as well. When I first started, people always would ask me. They would say, "Oh, when you were a New York City cop, did you ever see corruption?" Right? And you watch these movies from back in the day, right? That there was corruption. I'm like, honestly, I've never had anything in regards to corruption. I'm like, maybe guys were a little bit quick on a call for service or something like that, which is fine. Maybe they got burnt out, or if a cop was shot at before, right, he's going to be different, in the future. I always said, never saw anything. I always say that, I guess two things kind of came up, but the one thing is, when you go to for lunch inside the precinct, right? Like you were never allowed to you were never allowed to sleep. Right. Remember that was a rule, right?
Right.
So we would say like, oh, I'm closing my eyes, or I'm meditating, right? Like, that you weren't sleeping in general. Right. I always laugh because, right, you always tried to get like a lunch that was like out in the street, and you go back to close your eyes because you're tired, right? You're out in the street for 8 hours or something. So that I always remember saying, well, technically, corruption-wise, if you close your eyes and you're sleeping, it's considered corruption. You're not supposed to be doing that. A form of corruption, right?
I never looked at it that way. Like, it's just for me, it was just a minor thing. Like, if you were to close your eyes, it's.
But they would say like you're stealing time. They would say you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to be.
Stealing time is like actually not working.
It's not working.
If I'm on meal,
lunch break?
If I'm on meal, I'm entitled to my meal. What I do, as long as I'm not doing anything illegal,
Got it.
closing your eyes. I'm just thinking. I'm just thinking with my eyes closed.
So I always thought that was, I don't know why I would say that, because I guess I always want to come up with an answer of what I've seen. I'm like, technically, some people, because it's corruption, if you're sleeping for the hour. I never saw that in general. I always say that sometimes, I always remember going to these different bodegas that I remember giving money, like let's say I had $100 bill, and basically I bought a soda and chips. The guy one time, he took the money, to me personally, and he basically made the money, like changed the money, but he put it in a brown bag to give it back to me. Like change. I'm like, what do you do? Like, oh no, he put the soda and the drinks and he did the change inside the brown bag. I'm like, what are you doing? Like it almost looked like I was like corrupt. Like the guy was trying to like set me up or something. And I just remember like, don't put the money in the bag. Just give me the money back. It looks like I'm robbing the place. And I just always remember that, that unusual things happen. Like they're trying to like set you up, certain people, Right. Have you ever had any?
I've never had that.
Never had that?
I've never seen that.
Yeah, I was like, what are you
I
doing?
never
Like,
even took the bag. Like if I bought a soda, I'm like, I just took.
Well, sometimes
the
they
soda,
put
I
it
left
in general, like soda.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I've
Have you
never.
bought a few things?
I've never had that. Yeah.
So what other things have you would say over, so basically over 25 years? I mean, anything unusual that you want to share, anything different culture of NYPD, anything that you can think of, any war stories in general that, I want to ask you about 9/11, where you were in general, and then maybe about, Mouseburg as well, because I don't know the whole story. I guess let's go into that. Where were you 9/11?
9/11. That day, I was actually working with my partner, Mike. We were, as a matter of fact, when that came over, we were just handling a burglary. We just took it was on Rockaway and Livonia. There was a supermarket that got burglarized the night before. So we were actually handling that. And I remember hearing over the radio, it was a 7-5 guy that actually said over the radio, he was asking like, Central, can you confirm that a plane hit the World Trade Center? And I'm like, and I kind of know the guy, and I don't know him personally, I should say. I know him from his voice, like he'll say like silly things on the radio. And when he said that, I'm like, is this guy kidding? Like, so Central was like, stand by. And she said, it's confirmed that a plane hit the World Trade Center. So me and my partner looking at each other like, what? So I said, all right, let's switch the radio to citywide. And sure enough, you heard screaming. Cops were screaming in the radios. Central, there's just everyone's screaming. Plane hit the World Trade Center. There's smoke. There's fire. And we're like, that's crazy. So we're thinking like, oh, maybe it's a small plane. So I said, all right, let's go take a ride up to Kingsborough Bridgewalk, which is like the borderline of the 7377.
Okay.
So we took a ride up there, and there was 2 other sectors that came too. And we walked up the stairs. So the sector that got there before us screamed like, oh my God. And I'm like, what happened? Because he got up right before us. He goes, another plane just hit the World Trade Center. And sure enough, we go up and we see the 2 buildings on, we see the plume of smoke coming out, the wind. And we're just like watching, like, oh my God. So we were up there. We were up there for a while. We watched. And then we were able to see Atlantic Avenue. And all you saw was fire trucks and police vehicles just flying down Atlantic, heading to the scene. And back then we didn't have cameras. We just had like those disposable Polaroids. So we took pictures like from where we were. And I was like, this is crazy. Like, this is insane. And then the radio was kind of quiet for a bit. So then we're like, all right, what do we do? So we said, all right, let's go back to the precinct. And we go back, and now we're hearing like they're calling people that are off duty to come in from home. So we're like, oh, got to do something. So my partner and I, we went over to Eastern Parkway because we're like, oh, someone had called and said that traffic was stuck on Jackie Robinson at the time. So we took a ride. So we took a ride up Jackie Robinson, and sure enough, everyone that was, I guess, going to work or wherever, they just basically stopped their cars on the Jackie Robinson. So any first responder that was trying to get down the Jackie Robinson couldn't go anywhere because traffic was a dead stop. So we started making people like, get in cars, you gotta go. Because from there was a vantage point that you could actually see the skyline of Manhattan. And everyone just pulled over to stop and watch. So we started making people get in their cars and go.
Okay.
And we were like, firemen were passing us like, thanks, we're just trying to get to the firehouse. So it was just crazy that day. And then from that point on, we said, all right, you know what? Everyone's moving. We went back to the precinct, and it was quiet. I'll tell you, it was eerily quiet. We were driving around. To me, it was like we weren't getting any radio calls. There wasn't anybody on the street, even cars. It was like kind of like a ghost town for a bit. So we're like, all right, let's just, anybody calls and we'll just wing it, you know. And then it started getting busy, and to this day, I look at my mobile book. There's jobs that we handle, but I have no times because we end up going from job to job to job that I didn't even write the times in. I just have the jobs. There's just no times. So it was just surreal, I would say. Surreal.
In regards to Mouseburg, which officer we work with, what happened with him at the end?
He got sick.
Was he doing a cleanup? He sat out, or?
Well, he went down to the pile. I don't remember exactly what he did when he got down there. My partner and I, we were doing like security around the area. We got like every day was a different post. Some people volunteered to either go to the pile or they did different things. Like everybody else. Everybody had like different roles, and they were in different parts of downtown. So being that we have different bodies, and where we were, everyone inhaled different amounts of whatever the non-toxic air they were saying.
So he basically got sick from being at the dump. Like, is that what you say? Or
so
went down there?
he got sick. I'm not exactly sure where he got sick from. I kind of didn't want to know because that could be me, and all the others that got sick. I'm like, maybe if I don't know, maybe I won't get sick. Knock on wood.
So basically, he got sick from 9/11. He passed.
Right.
Got it.
So he got a brain cancer, I believe it was. So
But he wasn't down there that day, right?
I don't know if
Were there any seven? I don't remember. I never knew this. Were there any 73 guys? So what was the guy that jumped into the boat? The sergeant that jumped in the boat or something? He broke his leg.
Oh,
black sergeant.
I remember the sergeant. I remember hearing that story. I never spoke to him about it, but I know there was election day that day, so there was an election detail. So the guys that did election detail, from what I understand, went down. Those are the ones that went down. So everyone that was on patrol stayed on patrol. Everyone that was inside had to suit up and be ready. And the election detail went down. So later on,
7 guys or like?
I don't even remember how many, but I remember one guy that came back. He said that he ended up when the building came down, he had to jump in a boat and ended up in Jersey. And somehow during the day, they all made it back. His pants was all white from the dust. I was like,
so that day, so election detail went down there, and then they all make it back.
yeah, they all made it
But
back.
the guy that jumped in the boat, did he break his leg or something?
I heard the story, but I never
know?
confirmed it.
Was it?
You know what I'm saying?
It was a black sergeant. I remember. I don't know why I'm saying that.
Uh,
I forgot his name. It was like a jovial guy.
I think it was Sergeant Wheeler.
Yeah,
If
Sergeant Wheeler, yeah.
I think it was Sergeant. I don't remember if he broke his leg. I don't remember seeing him because
Got it.
those days were a blur. Because we did like long days. If you worked it. We all did the long days. It was like over 12
But yeah, it was Sergeant
hours,
Wheeler. I
30s.
remember.
So
Gotta
just
find out
like
the whole story.
yeah, just trying to.
But
keep
basically,
track of
everyone made it back.
Right. So everybody that went down that day made it back. And I remember that one guy with the white pants. The face, the look on his face was like he looked like he wanted to cry.
Where did you see him? Like walking into the station house, or
He walked in the precinct. His boots and his pants were white from the dust, and he looked like he wanted to cry. He wanted to break down.
But
and
he made
cry,
it back
like-
that same day.
But yeah, he made it back. that afternoon, or I should say that evening, early evening.
You don't know who that was, do you? Remember?
No.
A long
No,
time.
it's just you just like see the faces and
Yeah,
you
yeah,
just
absolutely.
like it's
And the problem is what people don't even know, like in our precinct, there was probably, 300 cops, right?
Right.
How many, like 300 cops? So a lot of times you would see people's faces, but you didn't really know the names sometimes, right?
Well, you knew the names, but it just everything happened so fast.
In general.
And you're just trying to, with the events that went on that day, you're just like, like you just still you're still trying to like understand because you're like thinking like, what just happened?
Yeah.
Like,
Actually, it's interesting. So I was still there. I was actually MTA Police, and I actually was in Jamaica Station. And they said, hey, we need 2 volunteers to go down to Brownsville, to East New York, to that little station there, if you remember.
oh right,
Right where they take the railroad?
what was that like by Fulton Street,
Yeah. So basically they said, oh, wait, the one that's by Brownsville?
Broadway Junction?
Yeah, Broadway Junction. Okay. So they said, I said, oh, pretty cool. Maybe I'll go stop by the 7-3. Like I could walk in like, hey, I'm an MTA police officer now, kind of to show like I made it out.
Right.
I got out of the
I got my
Brownsville.
hook.
So long story short, I was down there in Brownsville, and then all of a sudden on the radio comes down about the plane hit, the Trade Center, and then I was like, oh, like what do we do? I was still kind of new. I had 3 years, and I guess I had 3 years on, right? And I was with maybe a senior officer for MTA. So at the end, we got told to go down to, and I found that it was like Knickerbocker Station, right where you come over the bridge. There's a train station that's downtown. I don't know why I always say Knickerbocker Station.
Downtown Brooklyn?
Yeah. What's the main railroad where you get out?
Oh, by Barclays. To me it's
by Barclays?
it's like Flatbush. I think it's Flatbush.
But you could see like people walk over the bridge.
Yes.
So anyway,
Yes.
I wanted to be there with another MTA cop. It's kind of an interesting story. I'm down there, and basically people are like walking over the bridge, and they have the white soot, and it's kind of like I always say watching the Nakatomi building in like Die Hard.
Right.
It doesn't look realistic from afar, but if you were right there, probably it's a different story, right? So long story short, people were like started walking away after came down, and some firemen came like, look where you are by the tower there, like we could be hit here too, like we may be at war, like what are you talking about war? Like it's weird. So I was like, oh shit, like what do we do? So I remember I was me and just one MTA cop, and there's like a little bit of an office downstairs with equipment. I said, let's go downstairs and just see what equipment that we have available. God forbid something we get hit here or something. So I remember we go down there and everything's locked. We don't have a key to get to like the emergency equipment. So I was kind of getting annoyed. Like, how do we not have a key to go get the emergency? It's an emergency, right? So what I did was I remember at the time, I think the other cop didn't want to do it. I was like, I broke the actual door to just see what kind of equipment we have, right? So I break the door open, inside the MTA Police, whatever you want to call it, a satellite office, And then I take out the equipment. Of course, the batteries aren't working. There's lights are not working. Like I'm just assessing like what we have. Not that I have any military experience, right? I'm just going through the shit to see what we need, right? And then at the end, basically, we took some things. Oh, I got a PA system, So long story short, I was down there at the railroad. I basically was telling people in the PA, hey, get on the train, it's going eastbound. Like there was no fee, right, for the train. Get on the train, eastbound, get on the train. Like just evacuating people from the city.
Just go, yeah.
And then I remember people coming out, they had white soot basically, probably up to maybe the most like to their knee or something like that. I didn't really see people, if I remember, above the knee in general, but basically I was just evacuating people. And I felt bad, right? You're thinking, do you go into the city? Do you help out? But like that was our post, right? Someone needed to be there. I always remember people come up to me that had animals, dogs, and you're not allowed, like I guess at the time, animals, right? Unless maybe it was a service animal. I actually remember telling people, which sounds stupid and crazy at the time, I would say, look, you have to leave your dog here. Like, you can't take the dog on the railroad. Meanwhile, there's an emergency, like, just take your dog and go. Like, someone said, why do you leave my dog here? I'm like telling people, like, it's just not a normal day. I'm like, just take your dog, get on the train. And I think everybody was going to Jamaica Station, just getting out of there. So, yes, it was a crazy experience. But I always say it just felt weird because if you were right by the building and you saw it coming down and you saw people that, jumped or whatever, it's a different experience. But to us, I think we're also desensitized as police officers that we basically just see so much stuff that it almost seems like a movie like that. I don't know if it's me, but like when you see it from afar, like you might be like, wow, that's not good. But was I terrified? Like imagine running if that smoke was coming from you, Now I always say this, 3 days later or something, I went down there and this was the bad. I went for some tests, in general, even though I don't think I had any issues. Once in a while, actually, here I cough once in a blue moon. I think it's allergies, the dryness, being in Vegas. I'm here 20 years. But I went down there for I always say about 3 hours. I brought railroad crane equipment. It was like a convoy and lighting equipment, like these white box trucks. And I remember I was on the convoy like it was military, basically driving down. And I remember some people had some masks, and I didn't have masks, right? No one had masks. They said, hey, you have an extra mask? No, everyone said, no. So I was on the convoy. We finally make it down there. We're by we're trying to figure out how do we get the cranes or the lighting equipment because of the debris. So it must have been 3 days. Sometimes I feel like maybe it was a week. But long story short, it was like Millennium Hospital, this fire department, and they said, be careful over there. There could be a gas leak over here. I'm like, I don't know where I'm going. And I remember stepping around in general. There's debris on the floor. And we said, oh, we shouldn't go this way because there's a gas leak. Let's go down the other street. And we finally get down there. And I always felt a little weird because I was MTA Police. So like I wasn't NYPD, even though like kind of looked the same. I always felt a little weird. Like I was like, I want to be like, hey, I'm NYPD, but I'm in an MTA Police outfit. Like I'm really you, but like I'm just hiding out.
I'm a new me.
Yeah, I'm just hiding in this better job, but I'm really you. You know, I always felt that way as an MTA cop. It wasn't the same. It wasn't like NYPD, and you always got looked at a little bit different, even though you were making like more money. It was a better job. So long story short, we brought this stuff down, and I remember I felt funny walking very deep, and then one of the senior cops was like, hey, let's just walk more into it, and I felt funny. But long story short, lighting equipment, crane equipment, we left there. We wound up going back, but I had no protective gear, in regards to it. So I always felt like, will I get sick one day, right? A lot of people got sick. But anyway, long story short, I mean, it's definitely a mess of a situation. And then that was 9/11, was it September? I wound up working like Grand Central Terminal in Penn Station because of security detail.
Right.
And then I wound up leaving in February, coming out here, go through another police academy. But definitely crazy times. I am glad that I did serve New York City during that time, right? New York City cop, and then I was there. Imagine if I was out here, I would feel bad and guilty, like I left like my city. So I felt glad that I was there, even though I came out, after that in general. Any other stories that you have from 9/11 that personally with you or any other cops, or besides Mouseburg, or did I miss anybody?
Mike Ryan, Sergeant Mike Ryan, because Gary used to drive him.
Okay.
And he also passed from cancer from 9/11.
Were they
as
there
well.
together? Was it Mike Ryan?
Mike Ryan. Yeah, I don't know if he was in the unit with him. I don't believe they were in the same unit together, but I know he used to drive him. I used to drive him. We all took turns driving different supervisors, but they kind of bonded. So Gary would drive Mike.
Okay.
But it was like Gary's, like years later, that didn't took effect. So
So it took a long time. How long was he on after? Do you know about?
I'm not exactly sure.
Got it.
It's just
So both of these officers passed, but Sergeant Mike Ryan, which I already forgot, he was a 7-3 sergeant?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And was he? I don't know. It's been a long time. I got to look it up.
He was my squad sergeant. So
I must have known him, right?
Yeah. If you were there, you'd probably have known him.
So him and Mouseburg were the only ones in the 7-3 that passed from that?
That I know of. I know there were some PSA 2 guys that had passed.
Okay.
Because everybody went down. So off topic, you should get checked out every year.
Yeah.
Being that you were down there, always get checked out.
Believe it or not, I actually tried to fill the paperwork one time, and they couldn't find my memo book for MTA PD.
Oh, you didn't keep your books after
There
you left?
wasn't. I don't know what that book. I think with I kept my regular books, but the MTP I think they took the book because I was only there for 9 months.
Right.
So I think that somehow I had a year leave of absence. I could have went back. So somehow they couldn't find the books. They looked for it at one time, but I never really did anything with it per se. And like I said, I was down there for 3 hours.
Right.
Of course, I mean, I did follow through a little bit. I never what are you supposed to do? I didn't follow the memo book, but they couldn't find it. I guess they went to go look for it or something. I don't know. I never really followed through. I mean, sometimes you say to yourself, like, if you don't think about it, it's not going to happen to you per se, right? I mean, I have insurance. God forbid something happens. Who knows?
Right.
But anything else with 9/11 at all? Sad situations, crazy times, over 20 years.
From 9/11, like the one
Any
thing
learning
that,
lessons, like from you being a cop, or
in
like just 9/11 in general, like things that you did differently, or I mean, it's a terrorist attack. I mean, what more did you do?
it was just so like that day and the days after, it was just like one blur. It was surreal.
Mm-hmm.
And everything that happened after, we just did security. But the one thing I remember, I was down on Greenwich and Rutger with my partner, and I thought it was crazy because we were only like 2 blocks from the ground zero.
Okay.
And the following days, there's one day I remember, it was a parking lot that was right next to us, which is not there anymore. The cars that were in there were like, you're talking about maybe like 3-5 inches of dust that was on the cars that were never cleaned off. And like, I'm thinking to myself, like, wind blows, that's all going to come down on us. There was some National Guard guys next to us, and I'm like, oh, man, we're all going to, because we're here for how many hours? And there was a fence that was set up, and it was crazy because people, the tourists that were there, they started taking pictures, because behind us was like the piece of the building that was like at a weird angle, and I think the Deutsche building was also behind us, and they had the one piece of a beam that was sticking out, and people were like taking pictures, and my partner was like screaming at people, "Stop taking pictures! It's not, there's not a tourist spot. It's it's a tragedy. Like, keep moving." He was like shooing people along. I'm like, I'm still trying to take it all in. Not even worried about taking pictures.
So knock on wood in general. I mean, what's your thoughts? I mean, it happened once in the Twin Towers years ago. It happened, right, 20 years, whatever it is later in general. I know you have the new tower that's up. I mean, what's your take? I mean, you think that, people always say with terrorism that basically they have time to wait. They'll wait another 20 years. I mean, do you feel in general that there'll be another New York City attack?
Anything's possible. It's a different world now. So
there's so much going on at this point in time. Like, it's just like
anything
it scares
is
me in general. Even though I went, what do you call it again? The Liberty, what do you call the new tower?
Freedom Tower.
Freedom Tower,
So
right?
anything is possible.
It just scares me in general. Like we went up there one time since after 9/11. But the truth is, it's just scary to be in these tall buildings, knowing that it's already happened, and they'll wait it out,
right?
In general, and then truth is now you got things going on with Russia, and it's like, it's just crazy times. Who would have ever thought, like 20 years later, that the world it just seemed like in a worse place? You'd think that it'd be in a better place. Right. And I will say this: I mean, a few years ago, besides COVID in general, I think that things felt better in general. Where they were, now it's a different story. Now I feel like everything has basically went south. With Russia, with COVID, with people off, and like. It's just crazy times.
This would be a 24-hour podcast. If we talked about everything.
They actually have a 24-hour podcast once a year here.
We'll do that another day.
Yeah.
But this is very deep. It gets deep.
Yeah, there's a lot of things going on. All right. One last thing I want to share, bring up to you. What do you think in New York City? So everything basically is changed in New York City. Some people believe it's the previous mayor. What do you feel changed so much, and what you're feeling to change it back? Because I feel like all the years of New York City cops basically working so hard to make things different. And I do believe at the time when Giuliani was there, basically the whole quality of life, or even from what my knowledge, remembering be the Tracy unit, like going after basically quality of life issues. I feel that was really good. And looking back on it, you say, wow, if you tackle quality of life issues where people doing small levels of crime, we're going to stop the big crime.
Right.
I think that's changed. I know that the anti-crime unit basically went away with the other mayor. Now we have this new mayor in general. Whether race comes into play, like what's your take on the past and the future? How do we basically get New York City back to being a safe place? Because these days it just seems like off the hook.
Well, I think it's basically it's politics. It comes down to politics. There's no other way around it. It's a small minority. It's a small minority group in terms of that. I don't even begin to say it.
I mean,
it's like
politics.
It's the politicians. They're catering to a small group. It's good. The good guys are bad guys now, and the bad guys are the good guys. That's what it's come down to. Mm-hmm. I mean, prior to de Blasio, crime went down. You can go out late at night. You don't see the things that you see in the news. And I don't even think it's just New York. I just think it's
all over.
All over. It was just they turned it into something else. That's what it was. Like, they made it into a race thing or a bad guy thing. It just went 180. And so then you had the governor who overnight did the bail reform. Mm-hmm. Which basically it was like they gave the keys to the city to the bad guys. So it's like a get out of jail card. Mm-hmm. You shoplifting, right? When you had a shoplifter, you process them, right? You did your paperwork. That person that did the shoplifting went downtown, saw the judge. Okay, they checked the record, and they either had a brief stay or the judge says, okay, now you got to come back to court. Mm-hmm. Now it's just you're not going to court anymore. You're not going downtown. You're just getting a summons and
basically being released.
Yeah, and then that's why they call it catch and release.
So the bottom line is that if you want to basically stop crime, we need to be harder on criminals, right? You can't just let
Right.
people out. Jail reform is going on. Even here, people getting out of jail, like they threw gasoline at a detective out here and he's back on the street, no bail, stuff like that. So the bottom line is if you want to take control of the city, bail is an issue. But then how do you say against regards to bail? Because the people that are, let's say, are lower socioeconomic groups, they'll say, well, I can't afford bail, but the rich guy can get out, but I have no money and I'm stuck in jail and then I have to take a deal in order for me to get out. I mean, I can understand both ways. What's your take on that
Right.
one?
So I get it. Like, so I kind of think like bail is like a business, which it shouldn't be. It should be depending on your crime. Because crime is like, a person doing crime is like a fingerprint. It's all different. You can't really, one person doing, two people doing an assault. They're doing the same assault, but their background might be different in terms of that's what they do. They assault people. Whereas you have a first timer. So you can't compare the two. So you can't say, well, they both get bail or they both don't get bail. You got to do it in proportion to the crime, right? If you're besides the crime, your background. If you're a recidivist, we can't give that person a pass because they're just going to take it. Well, they're not going to do anything to me. I'll do it again. It's like a shoplifter. You catch them the first time. Okay. All right. You have no record. You got caught shoplifting. Okay. Listen, you're going to see the judge again. Judge is going to look at your record. Oh, you have no record. Okay. Listen, don't do it again. Okay. That person, no bail. Okay. I get it. But the person that shoplifts 2, 3, 4,
Got it.
they're never going to get the message.
Do you think that instead of bail reform, because it is a business in general, that maybe that the courts actually have it instead of having like a private business, that the court should make up the $10,000, $5,000, right? You don't have to make it a part of a business situation.
Right.
That they should be involved in the bail amount, right?
Right. Like the
Instead of
judge
having
has,
private parties. I mean, because I think there's lobbyists for the bail bondsman, right, for all throughout the United States. Like it's a private business, right? And surety, right?
Right.
Why don't you just pay the money to the courts?
Right. And then, like it should be like a driver's license. Like it should be done through.
Yeah, it's like a DMV thing,
Right.
$5,000 to get out for this one time, but the money should go to the courts. At least the court should have the money, right? Not
Right.
like an insuredy bond, company.
Right. Exactly.
So the bottom line is you feel, so one of the things about the show, The Problem Solver, and today, even though we're reminiscing about old times in general, crime basically is more rampant these days. So we believe the jail reform situation, letting people go is not the best situation. Some type of more in the middle, not just letting people go.
Right.
Maybe the money situation basically being paid to the courts, not to the private bail bondsman, would you say?
Right. Because then it's not a business anymore.
Okay.
Because, like the government, not really supposed to be in the business of making money. Whereas if bail in a private company, well, they're going to want to make money. So of course it's going to affect those on the lower social economic scale.
Got it.
Whereas someone who has money, it's like, yeah, I take money out. But hey, you know what? Put my bail on my black card. Whereas,
Got it.
Someone who can't afford it, they're like, nah, I'm stuck. And maybe it's their first time. Whereas, someone,
So what else do you think in regards to, just to throw it out there, I know maybe you have to think about it for a second, but you're a cop for 25 years. How do you prevent crime? Like, how do you really prevent it? Is it just being harder? I mean, they have these programs, right? We have Neighborhood Watch, see something, say something, call the police, right? We get that part. If you had to sprinkle some fairy dust around the United States of America in every police department, is more the politicians or the government basically backing their officers? Because right now, I think in every city, I think officers just don't want to do their job because they feel like they're going to get penalized or they're going to get arrested themselves, right? I mean, if there's bad cops that are out there, fine, so be it. Then they have to get arrested and follow the process in general. I mean, so what's your take on, like, how do we solve this epidemic of violence and crime that's taking place?
well, depending on the location, how was it before crime shot up? I think because of the pandemic, people forgot. Like being from New York, that's how I see it. Prior to the pandemic, before the bail reform, crime was down. You could walk anywhere. Crime wasn't the top headline in the news.
Okay.
Once the bail reform hit, once I saw that, most cops that saw it, besides myself, were like, "Oh, this is not going to be good. This is not good," because basically it's a slap on the wrist for all the bad guys. That's not going to work well for the city. Of course, like everything else, it takes time. It's not going to, like, overnight crime shot up. Because of the pandemic, nobody was out. So
now it's finally hitting.
Crime was like, slowly, very slow, not because nobody's out. Once it started easing up where, okay, now you can go out. Now you can start doing. And all the bad guys started doing their little stuff. And after bail reform, they're like, oh, well, for example, shoplifting, steal. They're thinking in their mind that they're going to go downtown. But after bail reform, they're like, oh, this summons. I'm walking out the door. I could leave. Well, they're thinking it's get out of jail. So there's no deterrence.
Got it.
And that's what you need.
What do you think about these videos now? They're showing like, I think it's like San Francisco or California, where someone goes into like a Walgreens and they're just taking a bag and they're just taking all this stuff, and they're video recording on their phone, right? They're they're videotaping them, in general, and and loss prevention can't even go after them anymore. I mean, it seems like these videos are crazy, and the videos don't help because now it's going viral, so everyone's doing it.
Right.
And now they're closing down like Walgreens and CVS and places like that. Even with the security features, they're like lifting it up and they're breaking it out. I mean, so I guess it's the same situation. If you're going to be soft on crime, crime's going to be more rampant, and it's going to affect everybody one way or the other.
Right. There's no deterrence. That's the thing, is you need an incentive for them not to do it. And that's the problem, is there's more incentive for them to do it, for the bad guys to be bad guys, than there is an incentive to not be one.
All right, so I really appreciate you coming on the show today. I mean, we kind of reminisced a little bit in general, but I mean, it's interesting. We talk about jail reform. I just think things are kind of going, south in general, especially in Vegas. It's funny, you messaged me, you said, hey, is it safe in Vegas? I think I sent you a funny video. But the long story short, the bottom line is that, crime is basically increased everywhere. And I think if every city has politicians making it like just easier to commit crimes, they may not realize what they're doing, but the bail reform definitely is a situation that's a problem, because we're letting people go. And I think that with social media these days, when you show a video of people stealing, that other people see it, then it becomes more rampant. Where years ago, we didn't have the social media of showing what's going on.
It's a trend.
It's a trend. So, like on these TikTok videos now that are going viral, you see everyone stealing.
Right.
So everyone's going to go out. Like, they're getting away with it, I might as well steal too.
Right.
Or they're wearing a mask. One thing that actually does frighten me a little bit is with certain people that people with COVID now, they're still trying to wear the mask. They're making it more of a cultural thing in society, where you see people walking down the street and they're like still wearing a mask. And these certain people, and not to be discriminatory, whether they're white, black, Hispanic, or Asian, I feel like they're wearing the mask just to protect their identity, because they want to go commit violence. And they're using it because of COVID. They're saying, because of COVID. I've seen that out here.
Oh, I see
that in New York too?
I see people wearing masks.
But like that alligator thing, like not just a regular blue mask, like like a black alligator where you just see their eyes.
Yeah.
And they can get away with it now because they're saying because of COVID. But like, it's a young kid. He's 20 years old. Like, he's not worried about COVID.
We're profiling now.
Well, the funny thing is, we used to always say that we're profiling for the fact of criminal profiling, right? Which is not a protected class, right? If it's race and religion, it's protected.
Right.
But criminal profiling, right? If you're wearing it, it's common for people to wear these black masks, not even a blue surgical mask, right? Like a black mask that matches their clothes, that makes them look like a ninja. I mean, again, it goes back to criminal profiling, which I always say, again, it's not a protected class. It's funny, out here, I used to do a lot of things with apartment complexes.
Right.
And we used to say race and religion is one issue, but if you have criminal past, they're allowed to discriminate against you in general, because you're not a protected class. So if you have a DUI or just a domestic battery, they don't have to rent to you in this place. I'm not sure how it is in New York. Maybe places are opening up a little bit differently in general in other places. But anyway, real quickly, we just had a few pictures. I grabbed a few pictures of Showcase that you sent me recently. just to put up on the screen. I think that's you in the back left, right?
Yep.
That's an old car. What year do you think that is? You think that's if you had to guess?
97.
97?
Like a 97 Chevy. It's my favorite. The
old blue car.
My favorite R&P. I love it. You could throw a pizza box on the dash, and it would swallow it up.
I just grabbed a few pictures that were online.
I just happened to see Kevin back in April.
I think the picture's on here too. I think I grabbed that one too real quick. So just some old school 73 pictures. There you go.
There goes Kevin.
Wait, is he still working? What are you doing?
No, he's retired.
But he still goes to different events?
Yeah. Well, he does the Emerald Society thing. So,
okay.
Yeah.
He was a good guy.
Yeah,
Decent
great guy. Yeah.
Any other shout outs that you want to do? If anybody, I think we'll take the video, we'll put it on the 7-3 website, the 7-3 retired cops thing. Okay. Any shout outs, any people? I mean, anything you want to share?
No, to my 7-3 peeps, stay safe and stay cool.
Stay away from Rockaway and Livonia?
Maybe not eat the pizza there.
The pizza we used to go there now, it's still there. I'm sure
it's still
there.
Well, if it's still there, it's not bad. I mean, if you're on a midnight and you have no choice.
Is Patricia still working? That girl's working forever.
Mary, if you're listening to this, I hope you're retired. Yeah.
She's a
They need to
customer
take a
forever.
break.
She always said she was going to do real estate 20 years ago. She's like, I always see her still.
Listen, honey. Our favorite line.
Some great people that work in the 7-3. Anyone
Yes.
that's watching, we're going to put this out there that anyone in the 7-3, and especially anyone in NYPD, to be safe in general. We know crazy things happen all over the place. So prayers out to the 7-3 guys that we both came from. Anyone else?
Yeah,
Where else?
4T.
Where else? By the way, real quickly, from 99 till you retired, where else did you go real quick? We didn't get into that.
After I got promoted in 2006 from the 7-3, I went to the 115.
Okay.
So I became a Queens Marine. Sorry, Queens guys. Became a Queens Marine till I believe 2012 with Occupy Wall Street. I was scooter qualified. So they were looking for scooter sergeants to go down to do the details there because they marched around and we used the scooters to follow them. So I was one of the few. So I did that. And turns out the unit was actually looking for a supervisor, sergeant. And I said, I'll give it a try. Spoke to the lieutenant. He's like, just put in for it. And a few months later, boom, I'm in. So I did that all the way to the end.
So how many years did you do?
Total, I did 25 and a half years. 2012, so I did like 8 years. Did 8 years.
So you always in a scooter? Or did it change?
Yeah. I did scooters unless it was raining.
That's cool.
Then we did it on. I usually did it on foot.
Awesome.
Got my steps in.
Awesome. All right. Well, I appreciate William Liang being here today and kind of just sharing some wisdom, some old stories in general. Again, we wish Will the best of luck in general. You know, he's visiting when he comes out here more often. Any 7-3 guys that are out in Vegas love to set them up, some shows and different things. So we'll keep in touch in general. So again, I will appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks, Dave.
Hope you got to experience this first podcast in general. So anyway, I'm David Kohlmeyer. Every single week, the goal is to bring on different people like Will Liang, who basically is 25 years veteran in New York City, retired as a sergeant, basically, did amazing work. As you can tell, cared about the community in general, helping people solve problems, which I guess it's in our blood in general to do that. But most New York City cops, I would say 99.9% of one help solve a problem in general, more than they would have to arrest somebody in general. The goal is basically to help people in general, just like the Problem Solver Show. Every single week, Thursday, 4:30, live on YouTube, Facebook. Tuesdays, 6 p.m., Channel 14 on Cox Cable. Please be safe. If I can help or any of the problem solvers, 702-999-1111. Again, 702-999-1111 is the number. The problemsolver.vegas is a progressive web app. If you have any problems at all, go to the progressive web app and you can fill in some information. There's some great resources as well. Again, I'm David Kohlmeyer, the Problem Solver, and we'll see you next week.